All right. Happy Saturday, everybody. I'm Nick Slavic. I'm the proprietor of the Nick Slavic Painting and Restoration Company. Also the host of this show, Ask a Painter Live. It's a weekly live Facebook show where I use my 2 decades of experience as a craftsperson, as a business owner to answer any questions. Today, I get a lot of questions as Ask a Painter. Probably the most common question is, what do you charge for this? How do you estimate? All those sort of things. So today, we're going to go through the theory of how you come up with that. I got 5 or 6 different ways that you can come up with price. I'll share some perspective because it's not as simple as just assigning a price to things. I am going to check my connection real quick, and then we will get underway, making sure the audio and the visual audio and video is working here. We are going to go through. All right, there we go, folks. All right, so we're going to get after it today. I'm going to show you, we're going to be screen sharing in just a little bit this stuff. I have a whole bunch of resources for you. But first, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the PCA, the Painting Contractors Association. We are doing a virtual conference, a virtual event coming up. It is free for all members. So I would say go to the PCA website, sign up for this. It's already there for you if you're a member. If you're not a member, after this show is done, I will post a link so you can become a member. Where did estimating and price and the theory of all this come from? Well, it comes from my experience, and it also comes from the people who are in the PCA. I will also, don't forget this, folks. The PCA has this. This is one book of 2 that you can use to help everything with estimating. This is a series that will help you actually come up with price and everything else, along with the resources I give you. So in a world of what do I charge for something, you have infinity options. If you use your brain, use some common sense, you can come up with some very simple ways to come up with price and estimating. I'm going to go through some of those today. There are also resources here. Besides paper resources, besides the resources I give you, humans are the best resource when we try to come up with this sort of thing. So I would urge you, the brightest minds, the most progressive thinking, the most people willing to share these things with me, with you, are Painting Contractors Association. So if any of this thought process that you see today, if any of this theory, if any of these thought experiments interest you, this is what the PCA is all about. And it's going to be about that over the next couple of years. So, all right, let's get after it here. We'll do that. Let's do a little screen sharing. All right, folks, this is it. I do lots of shows on estimating, and still people have questions. Let's see, Top Coat Painting. Where do you get that PCA book for estimating? The PCA, I think it's PCAPaintEd.org. Just search for the Painting Contractors Association on their website. You can order it from that website. All right, so I'm going to be going through and answering all your questions. If I see a relevant question, I will answer it during here. But otherwise, just know that even on Instagram and stuff, I'll circle back and get to all of your questions. So, like I said, my most common sort of question that I get is, what do you charge for this? I have lots of thoughts for you. Assumptions. I begin every one of my master's classes. I travel the country teaching people the theory of this. In a time before COVID, I did tons and tons of these for 200 to 300 contractors at a time. And I actually have crowdsourcing experiments that we use at those things to come up with price. I will tell you this though. People honestly think that, well, I didn't make money on this job, or I don't feel like I made money on this job. I need to change the price. I will tell you, price is only one variable. You have lots of variables. Number one, you have to have a proven product. You need to be consistent with the way you paint. If you do not know how to paint, or you're inconsistent with your results, or you have to redo work, or you're doing things that cause a whole bunch of rework to be done, you need to fix your painting processes first. If you just adjust price, you're adjusting a variable that may not matter. You may be pricing your jobs perfect, but you can't do them in a good time or something. So I will say first, you have to know how to paint. You have to have a consistent product. This is done by a standard operating procedure that you follow to get a consistent result every time. Be honest with yourself about your ability to paint. There was a recent Facebook post from somebody saying, I stained a whole bunch of double hung wood sash windows, which are a very complicated project. And I didn't make out on it. I need to triple my price for it next time. And then once you ask a few questions, you realize they have never done it before. They really never stained things before, and it was all new to them. So I would say you have some homework as a craftsperson to do before you go out there and charge triple, because you may not get that job if you charge triple if you're doing it at your inconsistent rate. So you have to be consistent. You have to be open to the idea that you may not be a good estimator. And by estimator, it's not typing in prices. You may just be bad at presenting to a client as well. So again, what we do is all about trust. When somebody goes to my website or they see my van or they see me, there's consistent logos everywhere. I look like I do on the internet, like I do on my website. All of our forms, all of our communication is consistent. We do not lose the trust of the client in there. So very important that you have to have the trust. If you just disregard trust and think price is the only issue, you're going to lose a lot of jobs, even if you price them correctly. When in doubt, I always tell this to people. You're never going to know if the price is right. And we're going to get into that later. When in doubt, get the job, because you can get a data point. If you get a job, even if you make money or not, you can job cost it. You can track the labor, you can track the materials, and you can actually figure out if your pricing was accurate or not. Or it may point to something in your processes that you need to change. So when in doubt, I say get the job. I would rather have a job and figure out if it was a good price or not than not get it and not have a data point. All this, none of the things I talk about today are going to matter if you do not job cost. Job costing is tracking material and labor for each project. If you mess with your pricing and do a project and do not in the end job cost it, track the material, track the labor, and then compare it to the industry averages, you have wasted that experiment. It is not a good experiment. Now, a lot of this stuff, SOPs, pricing, estimating, people think there's a magic algorithm, a magic video, a magic thing you can do to always have it right. This does not exist. It takes human effort and consistent human effort to think about pricing, be intentional about pricing, and then job cost to find out if your pricing was accurate or not. Or instead of accurate, I should say effective. Most people do estimates by feeling. I can guarantee you this. You have to add the data to overlay this so you don't go crazy. I will never tell you, do not run a business by feelings. Do not estimate by feelings. Feelings are one of the things that makes humans unique. I will not disregard that. I have 29 years now in this craft. If I took all my feelings of this craft out and completely approach this by data, I would be doing a disservice to my clients, to my employees, and to the entire industry. But you have to have data. If you run your business just by feelings, you're going to go crazy. So think about this. This is the prototypical thing. I've talked so many painters off a ledge. You go on 3 estimates one evening, and they're all for kitchen cabinets. And each person, while you're in the house, you give them the estimate and they say, oh my God, that's way too much money. We're just going to do it ourselves. You will go home and you will rethink your entire business. You think, oh my God, I must be doing something wrong. I'm having my price. I'm gonna go 50%. I got to get you may have just run into 3 people who were never going to paint their kitchen cabinets before. And if you completely restructure your business pricing based on that, you are going to have this roller coaster. But if you know that you've completed hundreds of those projects in the past for that price point, and you have made happy clients, and you have made good gross profit and net profit, then you can take those feelings that sucks. When 3 people tell you you're way overpriced and they're not going to use you, and they may even laugh at you in your house, the feelings aren't good, but the data is, you know what? They were never going to be a client, and no harm, no foul. Moving on. So remember, almost all pricing questions, and for that matter, every single question in our businesses, painting business, can be answered with a baseline of job costing. If you do one thing in 2021, job cost, people, please. Okay, let's see if we got any questions here. Oh, good morning, everybody. Holy cow. Thanks for all the comments. Do you have a spreadsheet we could download for job costing? Yes. Gabriel Anthony Gore. Yes. Nick@nickslavic.com, my email address. You must mention that you want my job costing template, and I will send it to you. And all I ask for in return is a review of Ask-A-Painter. Ron Rams. Oh, friend of the show, Ron Ramsden. Hey, Nick, you hit it on the head. Excuse me. It's not only the estimate, but the entire picture, perception, perceived value you're giving, presentation and performance, communicate, follow-up. Yes, It's a holistic effort. And Ron knows this stuff in and out. He actually helps other painters with this stuff. So he knows his stuff. All right, let's go through Instagram here. All right. Oh, Yanni, there's only one way to find out. Got to do the work and track everything, dude. Love Yanni. You know it, man. You're living it. I'm getting ready to go do an estimate now. Is there a way to watch this later? Top coat painting. Yes, absolutely. Ask a Painter Live on Facebook, and then within a couple of days, it gets archived to YouTube. If you go on Facebook and search for Ask a Painter Live estimating, Ask a Painter Live, all this other stuff, you will find a wealth of resources. I actually did a live estimate with an actual client twice now, very early on, probably in the single digits, Ask a Painters. And this last year I did one too. You can actually watch me go from my van into a person's house, do the estimate, print it out, bring it back in and do that. So there's tons of resources out there for you guys, and it is all free. I have your job cost controls, and it saved my life. So simple and effective. Thanks a lot. Hey, man. Sam, you're the best, man. I'm glad to hear that. Job costing changed my life. It's unsexy. It's sort of simple, but it works. So, okay, everybody. Let's see. Kevin Hayes' biggest problem is our industry's lack of professionalism. Yes, I would agree. That's my mission, to overturn that. All right, so here we go, folks. Deep dive. This is it right here. What you're looking at right here is 29 years of experience, 13 years of running my own business. This is my price cheat sheet. This is a price for every single thing that I estimate, but it is not as simple as do this. What we do, me and Estimator Andy, we do the estimates in my business. This is a quick reference guide to get us in the territory based on all 5 or 6 ways of estimating. This is an accumulation of data. This does not come from somebody else. This is created by myself. I track it every day. We have intentional discussions every week about changing these numbers on this spreadsheet. I will not hand it over to you, not because I'm a jerk. I give away everything I do for free. This will not help you. Phil Klein, one of my best friends in the industry in Iowa, does a lot of new construction. I believe his business relies a lot on new construction. My business does not. I price new construction in a way where I don't really need it. I'm only looking for certain builders that share my core values. And if we don't get new construction this year, I'm perfectly fine with it. I assume Phil Klein would have different thoughts about it. If Klein took my pricing for new construction, it's likely he would experience very high levels of pain in his business. This is why I don't give it to you. I want you to come up with this stuff on your own. This is not helpful. We have a monstrous business compared to the industry. We are aggressively growing, and we're trying new things. We have an apprenticeship program where we need to feed coal into this machine to keep it running. A lot of this stuff would not be helpful to you. Honestly, it would be setting you up for failure. You have more accurate numbers in your business right now, and you don't even know it. So this is why I don't hand over my price matrix. It's not going to be helpful because I'm at a different stage of business than most people. You guys are at a different stage of business than I am. The number of employees you have, the goals of your business, the ideal projects. Some people only paint cabinets. Not me. We do Victorian restorations. We do all sorts of stuff. If you're only a cabinet painter and somebody says, restore my Victorian home, you may give them one of those go away prices that I hate that contractors do. I don't. I like them very much. I price them aggressively because I love those things deeply. My method of estimating. I have this, an estimator, Andy, will watch this and he will laugh to himself. I have a way of teaching people estimating in my company that's basically based on a children's book. You turn a page and there's 5 pictures of a house. You point to the house that is closest to that of the one you're standing in front of, a few modifiers, and that's it. I know people who have 2,000 line spreadsheets that they can measure every inch of a house, input it, and it'll come up with a price. That's not wrong. My way's not wrong. Their way not be right. My way may not be right, but it fits our personality and it fits our business. So again, people look at this and they may say, this is complete garbage. I don't even know. That's not helpful. Moving on. And also managing that estimating team, teaching them. All right. Methods to come up with price. This is an evolving thought. This is a distilled version down from my master's class, which I go around the country and teach other craftspeople. 6 main ways I think that you can come up with price. You can go by your gut, which most people do. You can use some simple reasoning, first principle reasoning, just like Elon Musk does. You can use some industry benchmarks, job costing, of course, which I would tell you to do. That's the best way. You can use production rates and units pricing with our distilled from job costing, and then you can use market rate. And that's one of the more interesting ones. So method one, gut. This is the most common. You basically have an instant comparison to something. So when you walk up to a house, you can say, oh, I feel like I've done one of these before. I probably charged about this. I felt like I made money. I felt like I lost money. So I'm going to change my price based on that. You can tell that there's tons and tons of faults in this now because most people don't know if they made money on projects or not. So they're adjusting prices based on feelings and not data. So if you feel there's some projects in my company that go over budget, we assign an hourly budget for them, which I'll show you how to do later. And they go over budget, but because in the reckoning of the project, it will actually end up being a good gross profit project. It's just that the estimates were a little off because we have to assign some assumptions to it. So most people, your feelings may be, I always lose money on these jobs. In reality, they may be some of your best projects. And likewise, you may be doing these Victorian restorations out there and they feel great. You may be losing your tail on it, but most people don't know. So this creates a punitive relationship with the client. When people approach, like, this is a job my company just finished. This is like a whole house, trim, cabinet, wall, closet, everything job. We stripped wallpaper, we painted walls, we enameled all the woodwork, enameled all the cabinets, stairwells, everything in the house. We have been dialing in over the years, getting data points to improve this. And based on, so about 3 years ago, we started these and we lost our tail on them. We would go 3 times over budget. We would do a good job for the clients, but we would be there 3 times longer than we should have to make money in order to do it. So you have 2 choices at that point. You can say, well, I'm charging 3 times more for this. The problem is we weren't doing as an efficient job as we could have. So we trained the living daylights out of the company to do this stuff over the last 3 years. I kept my pricing the same because I know based on market rate and the reps that I have, my pricing was fairly accurate. And we trained our painters to actually make money, to help us make money on the jobs instead of just charging more money. Because I think we hit the price threshold on it. If you do not have the data to show that, you will have this punitive relationship with your client. You'll say, well, I got burned on the last one, so I'm going to make sure this person doesn't screw me on this one. That's a feeling. The data is, I feel like my painters can be way more efficient on this stuff, and I'm going to take it upon myself to break myself and train them to get it done. So this gut method can sometimes give you a punitive relationship with the client, which I don't like. Method 2, reasoning. All right, this is one of my favorite ones, and this is one of the first things I do. When somebody says, hey, what do I charge for this? I'll say, well, let's just take a holistic look at this. First principle reasoning. Break the problem down to its sort of like break the problem down to its simplest things and just use some basic common sense to come up from there. Cindy, market rate. How can you find those rates? You have to do it through experience. I'll get to that in a little bit. So most craftspeople in our industry, people who can actually paint autonomously, will make about $25 an hour as a W-2 employee. Most paint business owners, interestingly, will make about $22 an hour or $43,000, $44,000 a year when all is said and done. Interesting statistic. Solopreneurs, this is your chuck in the truck. This is your one-person painting company, generally take home 50% of total revenue. So if you make $100,000, if you paint $100,000 worth of jobs in 1 year, it's likely if you run a fairly good company, you will take home about $50,000 in pay or $25 an hour. Here's the thought experiment though. We don't want to be average. We don't, if you're going to run your own company and take on that risk, you should make more than a W-2 employee because the W-2 employee has no risk. They can do a very poor performance and still get paid. So I will say, why not try to make $75,000 a year? So you'll take $75,000 times 2 because you take home half. You'll have to produce $150,000 in a year to take home 75 as a single person painter. There are 261 working days in a year. Basically, that means if you create $575 of revenue, this is work. This is not deducting anything else. You sold the job for $575, you painted it in a day and finished it up, no callbacks. You have created $575 of revenue in that day. If you do that every day for 261 days, that's 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, you will theoretically create $150,000 of revenue, take home 75. So how does that relate to estimating and pricing? We typically sell a bedroom repaint, our white glove treatment, for about $400. If you can paint about a bedroom and a half in a day, you have reached this goal. Congratulations. So now if you can paint 2 bedrooms in a day, you can adjust your pricing in order to meet your goal. So this is a thought experiment. This does not give you an exact price, but it's one way of kind of getting in there and doing that. But this is a thought experiment I love to do with people. Likewise, if you want to make $500,000 a year, it's a simple equation. You're not going to do it yourself. You're going to have other painters, and you can start working this and then multiply this by how many painters you have to employ to do that. So I love this sort of thing. This helps you kind of theorize what needs to be done, because it takes all the options. Like, I don't even know where to start. And it says, okay, so here it is. Let's focus on this one little thing. Method 3, industry benchmarks. This is super sneaky. So 5 years ago, somebody introduced me to industry benchmarks. Now, these are not perfect. These are not typical for every painting company, but I like to use a 10-person painting company because these numbers start to settle out and even out after a while. These are assumptions. You can see at the top, we assume people work 2,000 hours a year. We would like to generate $55 of revenue an hour. That means each painter in your company will generate about $110,000 a year. If you hire and train and keep 10 of those painters, you'll run about a $1.1 million business. Typically, when I look into businesses, when we compare finances and profit, loss, and things like that, generally, most painting companies can stick to about 15% of revenue for materials and 40% for labor. Those are the two big things that go into job costing. So let's say, theoretically, and this is, I'm going to show you an exact an example of how I do this stuff, because I run into stuff every year that I've never estimated before. Every Victorian restoration I've done is a new project. And likewise, especially when you get into commercial stuff, we don't have a lot of baselines on that stuff. We maybe 10% of what we do is commercial painting. So this is the law of deducing using material price as an estimate. So here we go. And my screen is sort of shared here. So sorry, there's going to be some numbers that are kind of not shown, but I will do my best here. Okay. Using industry benchmarks. This is an actual project that I was asked to estimate. I took my estimator, Andy, he was brand new at the time, and I taught him the theory of how we come up with a price for something we've never, ever done before. So here we go. The assumption is 15% materials. Based on my experience and based on the technical data sheet of Sherwin-Williams Loxon, it's a masonry coating that we're going to use for the outside of this building, we'll get about 100 square feet of coverage. And we also know cost per gallon. I have that already. So these are all assumptions we're going into this. I measured the outside of this building right here. You can see the square footage. We basically came up with about 19,350 square feet of total wall space of masonry on the outside. So if we divide that by 100, our coverage rate, that will give us the estimate of about 193.5 gallons we're going to need for one coat on the outside of this building here. If we assign that a one coat process, we basically know we'll just round up 194 gallons. I pay $41.70 for a gallon of Loxon. Basically, I'll uncover those numbers for you. We're going to have about $8,090 of material cost in that building. Now, if we divide that by 15%, because let's assume that we can consistently keep materials at 15%. If we can assume that 80-90 is going to be 15%, the revenue for this project that we'd have to charge is $53,933. Again, this is not perfect. This is not a dumb equation that you can just punch numbers into and say, yep, it's a perfect price. This is one way of theorizing what it is to come up with this. Go back down like that. I hope that helps. That's a sneaky back end way of doing something like this when you have big projects like this. Now, the fun part starts here. You have 19,350 square feet. You divide by 100. That gives you your gallons needed. Then you have material cost, and then you possibly have your price for the project, the $53,933. Here's where you can start theorizing, put your arms around this thing. If you want to keep labor to 40%, and that's our goal, you're going to spend about $21,500 in labor on that. Now, what does that mean? That's a big number. If you divide by the industry benchmark of 55, this is an hourly budget. If you finish this project in 392 hours and you only use 194 gallons, you will do an industry benchmark job of keeping materials to 15%, labor to 40%. That will leave you enough money in the end to pay for overhead and have a 15 to 20% profit if all is performed as well. So again, if you go back to industry benchmarks here, this is what we're sort of talking about here. This is kind of like a budget. It's something to strive for when you have this many painters. It brings the whole world of options down into how much money should I actually be making doing this? Well, here's something to strive for. And this would be a goal. All right, let's see if we got any. I know we had some questions coming through here. I don't want to. Paint school. How's it going, man? This should be part of everyone's prep for each year. Map out how much you want to make it happen, and get a weekly plan. Yes, goals are a great thing. Brushworks, how's it going, man? Okay, we'll keep on trucking here. More stuff. Job costing. This is my favorite. This is the most unsatisfying way of coming up with pricing because it takes effort and it takes follow-up and it takes consistency, which technically most painters and paint business owners are not great at. So what you'll find here is we do a project. This is just a bedroom repaint. You job cost, which are you track how much labor, how much materials, and then you compare them to the benchmarks. So this is an actual price for a bedroom repaint. Charge $425 for this. I did this one all myself years ago. We use 2 gallons of paint at about $30 a gallon a piece. So that leaves us with about $365 of some dumb gross profit. Since I'm not paying myself a wage, it took me 3 hours to do that. There we go. That gives me a revenue per hour of $122 of revenue per hour. Now, what does that mean? It's just a number. Well, here, go back to the benchmarks. Industry average benchmark is $55 of revenue generation per hour. I did this bedroom at $122 of revenue generation per hour. So there's 2 things we can glean from this. If I can sell a whole bunch of these bedrooms, this is great. I'm making 2.5 times the industry average for every time I go paint a bedroom. If I'm charging this rate and I'm not getting any bedrooms, I need to lower my price. I can lower it a lot and still make $55 of revenue an hour if that's the case. So there's not just a one-way street in this thing. It doesn't tell you to do this. You can say, well, if I do this, this changes this variable. If I do this, this changes the other one. If you can sell enough of these consistently, good. You may be just overproducing. You may be an exceptional craftsperson who can do work 2.5 times faster and better than other people. That's a variable as well. Production rates and unit pricing. And then after this, we can take any questions you want as well. This is what people love to do. They love to measure the outside of a house, and then they like to assign $1 per square foot in the hopes that that's the safety blanket they need to come up with the right price. We all know that that's rife with some variables and some danger. This comes, production rates and unit pricing, that sheet that I showed you guys before. A lot of this is unit pricing. We have a set price for an interior passage door. We have a set price for 4 different kinds of windows. We have a set price for different kinds of French doors, for cabinets, for bedroom walls, for powder room walls, for bathroom walls, things like that. That did not come out of the air. That came from job costing jobs and saying, hey, we actually made good money on this, or separating out a wall job. When we do walls and trim, we made great money on the walls. We lost our tail on the trim. Now, do we train more on the trim, or do we up our price on the trim? And that's a question that the business owner has to make. The pros for this, price comes easy. You make a spreadsheet, you measure something, you type it in, and boom, you're there. The con, the price isn't always accurate. The areas where this works great, production rates and unit pricing, we have great luck with cabinets. We charge a fixed price per door and drawer. We charge a fixed price for sort of open shelf, things like that. We charge a fixed price for a lot of things. We also have production rates for drywall. We're zeroing those in because that's way more standardized. When you get to painting the outside of a house, there's the cons. It's not always accurate. You have landscaping, you have weather, you have height, you have decks, you have dormers, you have type of prep and things like that. So there's areas where production rates and unit pricing work great. Stripping popcorn ceilings. You're not going to be surprised by most popcorn ceilings. It's going to be this. It's going to be a measurement. You know how much goes in, goes out. It's way less variable than painting the outside of a log or staining the outside of a log home, give or take. All right, let me just make sure I don't want any interruptions on Facebook here. I'm just checking the feed here quick, guys. I'm not getting any feedback from my mic right now. So Facebook people, if you can still hear me and see me, please let me know that you can hear me and see me. Be just a second, then we'll keep trucking here. I got that great farm internet out here. That's I had fiber optic when I lived in town in my historic home. Okay, good. People are giving me the thumbs up. Awesome. Rock and roll. I won't waste your guys' time then. Production rates, unit pricing. If you search for Ask a Painter Live, oh, thanks everybody. If you guys search for Ask a Painter Live, hashtag Slavic House, or Ask a Painter Live production rates, I have done an entire show on coming up with this. This is it. This is an actual house that we did this last year. I've also broken down my own home that I'm here living in. What you're seeing here is the results from an app called Hover. You take 8 pictures of a house within a couple hours, up to $100. They send you a full 3D model with full measurements and everything else. This is how we start dabbling with square footage rates, production rates, things like that. You can input all these numbers, and I'm going to show you where the fallacy of all this stuff is. This is what we charge. This is what we charge for the project here. This is the materials we used on this house. 18 gallons of paint. It took 57 labor hours to finish this. We had 5% of field management, my production managers. Gross profit was 43.2. Remember, we're aiming for a gross profit of 40%. This job did fairly well. Materials went a little over budget, but labor went under, and it all equaled out well. There is 921 square feet of siding and trim. We covered at about 102 square feet a gallon. Again, you can figure this out. There's fixed things here. You bought a certain amount of paint on this house, and the house, the dimensions of it are a fixed thing. You can back that out and figure out, well, we got 102 square feet of coverage on this house. So the production rate is, if you take the labor hours versus the square footage of the house, again, this is a dumb number. This is not perfect, but from prep to top 1 to top 2 to D prep, one of my painters can get done about 32.3 square feet per hour. Now that's in total. Now, if you want even more accurate numbers, you have to break that out between how square feet of a house like this can they prep, or how many windows can they prep in an hour, things like that. I don't like this stuff because it's so rife with variables. It can be a safety blanket that you rely on that can lead you down the wrong path. So basically, on the outside of a house, like, we got $4.64 per square foot to prep, top 1, top 2, and D prep, all one color. Now, you could say, great, oh my God, we got the magic number. $4.64 is the way we do it. I've solved this forever. This house that you see here has the same siding, LP siding, as this house right here. If I were to measure this house, which I did, and get out a number and take the square footage times 464, do you have an accurate number for a house like this versus this? The answer is absolutely not. There are so many other variables. There's 3 colors on that house. There's all sorts of dormers. There's shingles. There's trim above siding. There's landscaping to deal with. There's pitches. There's, I don't know, on this one, it's all a shingle roof. Some of these houses like that have a tin roof. Some of them you have to have a lift on. It's fine. You can get production rates for a house like this, but the problem is those production rates are only good for the people who did it like that. It's hard to apply to everything you do standardized. So now you can see where stripping popcorn ceilings is way more standardized than painting the outside of a house. Technically, these are the same jobs. They both have brand new LP Smart Side on them that both need 2 coats of paint. On paper, very similar. In reality, couldn't be farther apart. So I will say this, get production rates, use them if you like, but you have to compare them to something else as well. Market, this is the toughest one. People all say, where do you find these market rates? It's a feeling, and it comes from a little bit of data when you do your estimating. So this demands repetitions. I do 700 to 800 estimates a year. I can instantly get a feel for what's a good price, what's not. If we started in 2020, we started carpentry and we started drywall. Initially, my drywall prices, a lot of other contractors helped me out with coming up with some pricing initially. I went out there and I had a few customers laugh at me almost. They're saying, oh my God, that's so expensive. I got estimates for a third of that. I said, okay, well, that's a data point. That's good. But when you got it enough and I never closed a job, then I said, okay, well, my pricing, my spreadsheet for this is not accurate then. I got enough data points to know that from my painting estimate, when I get a result like that, I need to change my pricing. We changed the pricing and jobs started to trigger. And then pretty soon we started selling a lot of jobs, and the drywall division got booked out 2 to 3 months. And then that was an indication of, okay, well, we might be underselling. So let's tweak our prices back a little bit. We knew this because every single drywall job we did, we job costed, and we weren't doing the numbers that we really wanted to do. So we're tweaking those numbers there. But again, we're being preemptive and we're being reactive in the end to do those things. Success ratio, SR percentage. This is the amount of estimates that you do versus the amount of estimates that you actually sell. This is an industry benchmark. Again, you could make arguments for lots of numbers. I've always been told, and it actually bears out in my business, that if a good number to mess around with is 50%. If you do 1,000 estimates a year and sell 500, chances are your pricing is fairly dialed in. Now, where this goes wrong is the size of company. If you're a company like mine, which is a little larger, that 50% is a pretty good one. If you are a solopreneur, I would expect to sell way less than that because you just don't need a whole bunch of that work. If you're a solopreneur and you're selling half your jobs and you're booked 6 months out, you're actually doing a disservice to your clients by not getting there in time, and you're missing a lot of work in there. So I would tell you that you should probably have, we like to keep like a 1 to 3 week lead time. That lets us know we're charging a good enough price so we can afford health insurance, retirement, paid time off for our employees, pay them a good wage, but also we're serving the clients in the marketplace out there where we're giving them good value for the price. All right. Yeah, but market rate is tough. Market rate is tough. So remember, I will tell you this, in the end of all this stuff, the words of somebody much wiser than me, I was gifted this knowledge years ago. 1/3 of the people you come into contact with will probably never use you. And it's tough not to take it personally, but it's the truth. 1/3 of the people will probably use you unless you throw up on their shoes. And it feels like 1/3 of the people might be able to be swayed. The problem is you don't know by what. It could be presentation, it could be trust, it could be price, it could be schedule, timeline, all those other things. It's so tough. They may have a personality that jives with yours. The sniff test is, are you selling enough to keep your company afloat? Good. The most important thing, if you don't know, if all this is a mystery to you, the most important thing is to do painting jobs. The next most important thing is to job cost them to figure out if it's something that you can support your business on and make adjustments. Here's the truth. I do these shows. I probably do 2 or 3 of these a year where we talk about how to estimate, how to price things. The second I get done with this show, somebody 2 days from now will message me and say, how do you estimate? How do you come up with a price for things? I know that this is unsatisfying, that I should just say you charge this for this, this for this. This is the square foot rate for commercial work. This is the square foot rate for exterior, for decks and everything. It's not helpful and it's not going to help you. Be open to the fact that you may never feel comfortable with this. I will tell you this. If you're going to do something, 90% of all the painters that I come into contact with should raise their prices. They are underpricing their work and they're breaking themselves in order to make money for their company. They end up presenting their clients, causes stress at home, all that other stuff. You guys have seen when I do the War Room Masters classes, we have 8 or 10 painters from all around the country come in here. They open up their businesses. I open up my business and we job cost each other's projects. Universally, everybody does not price their projects enough, or they need to raise their prices instantly. I sit around this table and there are some of the best craftsmen in the world who are not making money on their jobs and they resent their clients for it. I will tell you this, raise your prices. We need to raise our prices. Price modifiers. Again, are you growing aggressively or are you in stability mode? You may need to fill a pipeline with jobs, so you may need to price your jobs more aggressively. This changes price there. Lead time. If you're booked out 4 months, maybe you don't need to price that aggressively. Maybe you can price a little bit higher. What if you have a tight niche versus a generalist? I'm a generalist. We do lots of stuff. If you just do cabinets, you may have to price way more aggressively because you're only after one thing. So here's the other problem. Who sets the production rates? When I go out and paint a bedroom, I create $122 of revenue an hour. When I send one of my apprentices out, they probably create $40 of revenue an hour. So whose production rates do we set it on? If I'm estimating prices on the way I paint, I've got 29 years in this and I care for it deeply. And nobody thinks more about it than me versus somebody who's only been in the trades for 4 months. You can see the fallacies in that sort of thing. And then seasonal demand. In May in Minnesota, if somebody in May in Minnesota wants to get their house ready for a grad party, it's likely that every painter they call is already booked for the summer. So there's a market demand in there. Maybe they're willing to pay a little more in May to get their deck stained so that they can have a party in 2 weeks. On demand stuff. Fun stuff. Okay, let's answer some questions, then we'll get to some fun stuff. Question, you earlier, the building cost $55,000 one coat. If you did 3 coats, 1 prime, 2 finish, I would multiply by 3. Now over 150 grand, nothing covers in 1 coat. Are you keeping the formula you sell in the job at one? Are you still keeping formula you sell that job at 150? Yeah, so the theory applies. There's a certain amount of labor and paint to apply 1 coat of something to that job. We have done some things in 1 coat in order to do maintenance stuff. If it's the same color, same coating, and we want to give the client an option of 1 coat versus 2 or even 3, that's what you can do. But that's, Mark, that's all up to you, what the building demands from you. If that building was a basket case and peeling all over, that would be a completely different process. This is just a thought experiment to come up with that sort of thing. Brian, job costing is course feedback. Yes. Forced feedback. Yes. John Giles, prep masking, etc. has been done, which is a significant amount of the cost. Each additional coat should be a percentage increase. Yeah. And again, John and Mark, you guys can see where this is rife with problems. You can come up with a production rate. Doesn't include prep. Doesn't include this. We all price things differently. For me, I include labor in there to include prep. I don't break out production rates like that. You can see on the house that I broke down earlier, I include prep, top 1, top 2, and D prep in my production rates because I don't want to have 4 different production rates to estimate. All right, let's see. Aaron, dormers are my kryptonite. What's your strategy account for them? Is there a markup or add-on? See, here's the problem, Aaron. If you're looking for a percentage, it's not out there. You have this percentage already. You have to price a job accordingly. You can always say, like when we price the interior of a house, we know how much it takes to paint 1 average size 15 by 15 foot bedroom. We end up using that bedroom equivalent as how many bedroom equivalents is this? If you think about the wall space and things like that. When I'm in an area, Aaron, where I don't know what to do, I think of how many days would it take me to do something? And you can even break a house down by its 4 sides. And even within those 4 sides, you can say, okay, I do this with the Victorian restorations a lot because sometimes we get into these monstrous mansions where they have 13 dormers up top. And from experience, I'll say, okay, I can do 3 dormers start to finish in a day. So you got 13 of them. 13 divided by 3, that's how many days up there. And you got to charge at least $575 a day. Now you can start breaking that down between all that stuff. So I think of it as day equivalents a lot of the times. I generally know what I can produce in a day. I generally have a feeling what my apprentices and craftspeople can produce in a day. And when we're in a situation like that, we just say, if I dropped an apprentice here, or I dropped one of my craftspeople here, could they get this dormer done in half day? Yes. Could they get it done in a day? Yes. Is it somewhere in between? And then you kind of just zero in from there. It's not a great answer. Again, you can assign a modifier. You can say your square foot range times 0.35. It's not going to be helpful on every house. So, all right. Thank you so much. Let's go through here. Oh yeah, you guys are going deep on my commercial project. Guys, I do not want you to fixate on the paint and the application and the this and that. This is a pricing theory question. This is a thought experiment. This is a way of saying, this is what something like this would take. You're taking a monstrous project, which you've never done before, which you have no idea how to do, and you can sort of back end weirdly into that. I have a completely different set of production numbers for those jobs after we've done them. And in reality versus how you estimate it can sometimes be very different. So yes. So again, people, don't fixate on stuff like that. This whole show, this whole thing is theorizing how you come up with stuff like this. It's the thought of, if I want to run a successful business, you can't fixate on 0.35 cents more per square foot on this particular project. You need to step all the way back and say, in order to run a successful business, we need to produce this. Can we get some jobs that produce this? And you won't know that till you get job costing. I'll take you through another couple of fun things here. So now once you get off, you can start getting into some fun sort of sales, marketing, sort of analytics. You're adding data to the feelings. Again, remember, I told you about the example of you go on 3 cabinet estimates, all 3 clients laugh at you. What most painters do is they go home and they completely rip up all the things they knew about estimating, start over at a lower price, and then get burned later on. You can actually figure out, if you track how many jobs you sell, how many jobs you lose, the price you sold them for, your SR percentage, now you can actually start figuring out, am I doing an industry average job? So again, one of the benchmarks in our industry is 3.5% of revenue is marketing. So in $1 million paint business, you can probably spend 3.5% or $35,000 a year and still probably have some profit left over for yourself. Within that, if you take that $35,000 war chest and spend it on advertising, you can then actually come up with cost per lead and cost per job. An example is a lot of the direct mail that I do. In the end, thousands and thousands of those flyers, in the end, when it all shakes out, when we get a job, it's done and somebody pays for it, the cost of all that marketing is about $125 per completed job in my company. And we know that because we track all the data. The spreadsheet that I'm showing you there is me and Estimator Andy's sales tracker for the first, I think, 4 months of the year. We track this. We see who's on target, who's not, if we're seeing any anomalies in there, so we can constantly have our finger on the price of market rate. So if you guys still have questions, again, be open to the idea that you're never going to feel 100% comfortable with this for one main reason. This is not McDonald's. We don't have a set price and then people come to us for this thing. Our pricing is set by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of irrational humans every year. The price for every one of our jobs is set by the client. The client does not know painting. The client may not be rational. The client may have a completely different set of things that they're interested in compared to you. So I would say it's data. It's feelings, but you cannot completely rely on what one client tells you about their job in order for you to completely overhaul the pricing in your company. When I lose a job, I'm very intentional about getting a hold of the client and asking, what was it? Was it price? Was it availability? Was it our processes? Was it our estimating process? Was it something about me? Please just give me something so I can help clients in the future. A lot of the time, it's 2 things. We found somebody a 30-year price, or we found somebody who could start today and they're painting right now. And now all of a sudden you can say, okay, well, they didn't mention clunky website. They didn't mention the estimating process. They actually loved our presentation. They may even loved all the codings and all our processes and things, but you won't know that until you ask. All right, we got a whole bunch of questions here. Let's go through this stuff here. Juan Laredo, good morning. Thanks for all the nuggets. Absolutely, man. Holly, do you have to charge sales tax if you have clients directly buy the materials themselves? So again, we don't allow that. We must buy the materials so we can control it. Holly, I've never charged sales tax for any of the work that we do. Dave Pine, the thought is really what separates a painter from a business operator. Yes, absolutely. Got to cut off people, want to simply paint and not think about what's creating revenue. Yes. And Dave brings up a good point. I listened to a podcast, one of my favorite podcasts, and the person being interviewed basically broke down our entire industry into a dichotomy, which is you can either do good paint work and be a master craftsman, or you can do a lot of paint work and make money. I think that is one of the most foolish stances to take in our industry. I believe that we can be the finest craftspeople in the country. We can provide good value to our clients, and we can also provide a living and freedom for our families and our client and our employees and stuff like that too. So I think it's an excuse when people say that you can't do both. Okay, so let's get back. Let's go deep into some questions here, people. Wes Melgren, my beloved Sherwin-Williams rep. Great stuff this morning, Nick. You might just be kissing my rear end, Wes. Now, Wes is a friend. He brings eggs, fresh farm eggs, every Monday to me here in the war room. And Wes and I are growing this business together. He's one of the greatest allies I have. And if you have not made your paint rep into an ally and a business advisor, I would urge you to do so, because a lot of the growth last year came from the partnership that Wes and I had and our sort of interactions and cooperations. So, all right. Let's see here. Does anyone have a caveat in your proposal for unforeseen variables, those potential variables that were missed or overlooked? All right. So executive painting. This is another touchy subject for me. So painters love contracts. They love trying to legalese themselves out of anything that can possibly go wrong. Experience will make up for this. And yes, you may have to take some lumps. We actually have a line on our info sheet that we have people sign off that basically says, listen, if you change this project halfway through, or we have to verify the scope or things like that, it means nothing to the client. If you have to go to your contract, if you have to go to the info sheet that people signed off and wave it in front of their face, you have already failed as a craftsperson and a business owner. I take the stance that we need to be better at what we do here. You need to have enough experience to know what you're getting into. And my company takes the stance of earn or learn. You either earn money on this job and provide good value to the client, or you learn a lesson. You should not make the client pay for you learning lessons. So there's a lot of things. We have a list of projects that we'll never do again, just because we've never found a way to make the client happy during it. And it's not that we can make money on it. Sometimes we can, but there's some disconnect between what the client wants, what we promise them, and then what we give them in the end. And if we can't make a beautiful transaction where they're super happy every time, we won't do it. Likewise, if you take it in the shorts on that big commercial building we were talking about before, don't take a punitive relationship with that client. It may be all your fault. You may not be a good painter. You may have completely misestimated it. But I would tell you, earn or learn. If you did not earn money on that job, learn a lesson for next time. Be intentional about it. Write it down. Fix your estimating process and do it again. We've all had projects that should have been easy, and you're faced with sections of the house that peels, rotted. So yes, here's the problem, especially with exteriors. We need to be better. Now, you can always write in all these caveats, but I will tell you this. Yes, you can make somebody sign a piece of paper that says, hey, if I find a bunch of stuff that I didn't see when I should have seen it on my estimate, I'm charging you more. And they may sign it. And when you bring that to them at the end of the job because you want to charge them a bunch more, they will be pissed at you. Clients do not like when you add money to jobs. So we found ways to just build in that sort of thing. We have enough experience in our company to look at a few places of the house for these areas and just determine what they are. We have a lot of data points on how to fix them and that. So I would say good, but we need to be better with stuff like that. Oh, painting by Tyler. How's it going? So executive, I don't actually have a contract. We have an info sheet. It's a one-page sort of FAQ where we just tell people, we describe our processes. It's I don't want to make it legalistic because I don't want them to think that we're trying to protect ourselves from anything or protect us from them. So it's more of just, hey, this is what we're going to do to your house. These are some things we've experienced. These are the expectations and the deliverables from you and from me. Just sign this just to let us know you read it, something like that. So. All right. Wes, thank you so much. Armando, what's better, stream of income and revenue in commercial or residential? Yeah, see, again, this is not a dichotomy. One is not better than the other. I don't like commercial work because it's impersonal. We work best around dogs, cats, pets, families, kids, in lived-in houses. That doesn't make us necessarily bad commercial painters, but there are people who do commercial painting better than us. We are a hands-on, touchy-feely, white glove service company like that. We prefer residential repainting. So really, it depends what kind of company you are. Really, there's a reason that unions don't do a lot of residential house painting. They are more tailored towards the big commercial and industrial. And likewise, there's a reason why I don't paint the new Viking Stadium, because we're not geared towards that. So it's really what you're good at, Armando. Samuel. Jim Ringley, what's your favorite painting podcast? Okay, so there's a whole bunch. There's Paint Ed. There's Nick May's podcast, The Business Brush. Honestly, I can't get enough of Noah Cantor, Advice from a Young Tradesman. That dude is one of the most thoughtful people I've ever met. We've sat in the same room multiple times. We actually talked on the phone this last week. I love that guy, and I love his thinking. I love the way he approaches everything. He is aggressively going down the hole of building a profitable business, all the while going down the deepest rabbit hole of craft mastery that I've ever seen. So I would urge you guys to do that. Now, when I say this, I'm missing out on about 3 or 4 other ones, but those are kind of my go-tos that are always in the queue. Let's see here. David Barton. Can you price in worst case scenario and reward client when it works out to be best case? Oh, listen, David, I will tell you this. Earn or learn. And one of the interesting things that we try to do in my business is we confront, or our problem is given to us, and most people just quick try to find a solution. What me and my leadership team do is say, let's go 3 levels up and let's find a solution so that the problem never shows up in the first place. So we're not caught in this problem solution loop and we're just putting out fires all the time. One of the things that I know, especially when I got into carpentry, we started a carpentry division this last year. We used to just do it time and materials. Hey, you want a couple deck boards replaced? Time and materials. For anybody who's ever done a time and materials estimate, what is the next question out of the client's mouth? Well, they'll look you right in the eye and say, okay, but how much will it cost? And you need to come up with a number. They're not okay with time and materials. I've had 2 scenarios happen with carpentry this last year. One person called me up insanely angry that said, your person was only here for 2 hours. And I said, I mean, are they done? And they're like, yeah, the project's done. I'm like, did you like it? They're like, yeah, the job's great. And I said, well, then what's the problem? I said, well, you estimated 8 to 10 hours. And I said, well, good. We just saved you a bunch of money. They said, well, I'm not uncomfortable with that. Did he miss something? Is there something I don't know? And I said, oh my God, we did that. We actually overperformed on that job. We gave them a relative budget and then performed it in about a quarter of the thing. And that unsettled them. Likewise, when you say, hey, listen, we're going to estimate 8 to 10 hours. And you know what? It took us 11 hours. You will never make a more angry client than when you go over something like that. So I will tell you, what we try to do is always assign a fixed cost, and we need to get good at it. So what we do very quickly, especially with carpentry, we did about 6 jobs. We job costed them. We figured out where that price needs to be, and we adjusted our pricing after every single carpentry job because we knew exactly what to do. We waited for that data point to come in. Carpenter Steve came in. He got a job done. Everything was good, blessed. The client paid for it, and then we job costed and said, okay, Steve's consistent. He's good at this. We didn't make money on this job. Do you think we can charge a little more to make sure that we can afford to have Steve do these jobs, things like that? So I will tell you this, my clients, if I did this, if I gave them variable pricing, even the option to go lower, I would unnerve them and not make happy clients. So I would urge you guys to stick to a fixed price and not go over it. Best case scenario. What percentage of your business is new paint versus new construction? Not much. We do at least 90% residential repaint. Last year we did, I think, 3 to 4 new homes. It's likely we will probably not do many new homes this last year. This next year, I just haven't been seeing a lot of leads come in from our trusted builders. So, when people install new base and trim, how do you go about pricing if you fill the Juan. All right. So this is the thing that people always ask. Instead of just, so here, again, problem solution. The problem is, how do you price this? The answer would be me giving you a price. If you go 3 steps up to solve this, do one of these projects and track your time, and then you'll know forever. You'll never have this question again. I cannot give you this because we do unit pricing on stuff like this, the average equivalent baseboard per bedroom. And in that pricing, I love simplicity. We have prep, we have prime, we have top 1, top 2, and D prep in that one single price. Again, instead of dwelling on 5 different prices to do one set of baseboard for a bedroom, we keep it simple so that me and Estimator Andy can comply with it. So again, good question, but the answer is unsatisfying, which is do one, you probably have, track your time, track your labor in there, and then adjust your price accordingly. Yeah, again, these are all great questions, and my direct messages will be flooded with people saying, yes, but how do you price a chimney? But how do you do this? Listen, folks, the unsatisfying answer is you can solve this or as close to solve for the rest of your life if you do some, job cost it, and then be intentional about trying to figure out if you made money or not on it. And that's the only answer. That is the best answer I can give you. It is unsatisfying. Also, in the meantime, I would urge you guys to get the PCA pricing guides. I can send you a job costing template if that'll help, but it takes effort, people. If you want to get comfortable or as comfortable as you could possibly get for the rest of your life with this, it takes consistent effort. It's not easy. Reed. Oh, my friend Reed, historic oak from Minnesota here. What are the projects that you have to say no to? What is the uncertainty in the bidding, pricing, or variability in the results that turn you off? So the things that we say no to universally are, we know we can perform a consistent project or a consistent way. We have done good jobs with this. The problem is the clients thought it was going to be something different. So Reed, you know this exactly. What this is not is wall painting and cabinet painting. Because when somebody hands us Benjamin Moore white dove and says, make my cabinets white dove, we can do that. There's a start and a finish line. When somebody says, I would like a decorative finish on my walls, some Tuscan plaster, and they show you a picture, that's usually my first request. Show me a picture of what you want. I come up with a sample, they approve the sample, we do the job, and in the end, because it's a variable end, they will say, well, I just thought it would be more orange, or I thought there'd be an undertone of red. What the client thought they were going to get was different from what we promised we were going to give them. And it's not our fault. We did exactly what they told us to do. They had an idea in their head of what was going to happen. So variable finish, projects with a variable finish line are something that we don't do anymore. Not because I don't like doing them. It actually saddens me that we don't do this stuff anymore, but it puts my company through so much pain. My two production managers have to stand in front of these people and say, we completely understand this, even though we performed exactly as we promised, we now have to deal with an unhappy client. And that's not something I like to put my people through. So there's some things like that, Reed, where we just say, we can't do it. Another big thing is gel stain my cabinets. Hey, I've been on Pinterest. We have golden oak cabinets. I want them to look like mahogany or deep red. It's like, we know we can show them a picture of what we're going to do, and we can do it. And then in the end, they're like, I just thought it would be less red and things like that. So those are the things that we try to get around or not do, only because it's not that we can't be consistent. We are consistent. It's that the client assigns feelings to the project that weren't there. And that's a tough thing to do. Let's see. Samuel. Do you specifically target your clients? Do you know when a client doesn't fit your business pricing standards? How do you handle to move on without harm? One of the most infamous lists I've ever created, this is a great question, Sam, is my PBC list, People Be Crazy list. These are traits that I've found over the last 30 years that make people not our ideal client. And this is not me making fun of them. This is not me not being open-minded. These are only data points that point to when a client meets somewhere between 5 out of these 10 traits or things or traits. Odds are this isn't going to be a very friction-free project. So we actually have a list that we remind ourselves every Monday morning in our leadership team meeting, our PBC list. People be crazy. And we've just learned over the years, there's certain types of people that indicate certain things that they will probably not be an ideal client. And again, no harm, no foul. I'm just trying to keep my company from pain and suffering. And I want that client to get good value. It's not that they're bad people. What I offer may not be a good fit for them. They may just have to find another person. So yeah, that's we have the PBC list. People be crazy. All right, let's go back to some Instagram here. Oh, painting by Tyler. Love following him. Paint school. How much time is it going to take? Yep. Oh, fresh paint. Sometimes we go a little over budget or a little under. We have enough experience to know that nothing needs to be charged. We look for trends over time, and we're always trying to improve. Oh, man, you hit on like 3 of my 5 core values right there. Number 1, if there's anything else, we'll probably take 1 or 2 more questions. Oh, look at this. Jason Paris. Jason Paris, good friend of the show. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate the hat. And getting a compliment from Jason Paris is a big thing because he doesn't hand them out all the time. So I'll take that one, Jason. Yeah, Jason actually is one of the people that I talk to about theorizing how to help painters with price, because it's an uncomfortable conversation. It's unsatisfying answers. And to me, actually, I should answer this question. Sometimes we get a little over budget. Yes, I would say number 1, it's probably your fault. If a job doesn't turn out, you either didn't paint it right or you didn't price it right. It's usually never the client's fault. Their houses are static. Their wishes are normally static, unless you have a PBC client with everything internally. So over the last 10 years, probably one of the best things that I've done, I've taken the stance that it's all my fault. Number one, with the painters. I've even not touched my pricing for many, many years because I knew the low-hanging fruit was making my painters better. And just getting rid of that sort of that variable in there. And then we can start messing around with price. Once I know that my painters are delivering really good value to the client, then you can start messing with price, but not before. So let's see here. Key factor over communicating. Yes, communicating with a client. I will actually go through, Isaac, I see your thing there. Do we have time to talk about oil primer? Yes. Oh, yes. Wild Acres Construction. What's your go-to oil primer? Nothing I love more than the oil primer question. Jason Paris is probably thrown up into a trash can right now. Yes, I do not want to use oil primer, but nothing sticks better, nothing sands better, nothing blocks bleeding better. And in 13 years, I've not had a failure on the outside of a house or a set of cabinets by using oil primer. My two favorites, Zinsser Cover Stain. That's 90% of what I use. And then Sherwin-Williams Extreme Block. Just is what it is. Easy Sand's a good primer. Benjamin Moore makes a whole bunch of fresh start primers like that. They're all good. It's just I can get Zinsser Cover Stain a mile from my house. They deliver it right to my shop 3 times a week. It's consistent. It's good. It never fails. Moving on. I would prefer to use a water-based primer or a hybrid primer, but there are none yet that will equal that of Cover Stain and Extreme Block. So yeah, Jason Paris gave me the gross face. All right, so let's see if we can get... I will pull up PBC for you guys. Give me a second here. I'm pulling up my leadership team agenda, and I want to make sure I don't miss anything. All right, so what do we got here? All right, so these are things that we've learned. Again, this is not me taking a a punitive stance to my clients. These are things that just, when you follow the data, they're not great fits for our business. So this doesn't necessarily weed out a client. These are just indicators that we use, and we assign it a number on a scale 1 to 10 in order to try to help this client better until they reach a number so high that they can't be helped by us. And then we basically just divorce ourselves from them or say, yeah, you know, I don't know if we're going to be a good fit. Maybe you should find somebody else. So they refuse our processes. You guys know, you've seen my SOPs. If somebody says, hey, on my cabinets, can you just not do the oil primer and use a water-based primer instead? Because I don't want it to smell in my house. We say, you're not a good fit. I won't do that because you say you want that water-based primer and I'll do it, but you will call me back in a second if those things chip. And that's not something I'm willing to do. You either do it my proven way because I'm the pro, I know what I'm doing. I can give you a guaranteed result if you follow this process. Hostile communication. So we have some people that are hostile and very scattered. They'll contact me in 8 different ways. They'll call, they'll direct message, they'll text, they'll email, they'll do this and this. We push everybody to email so we have a beautiful written record of their wishes, their concerns, and everything else so that we can reference it for their job because we have a team of people working. In any one job, we have an estimator, we have a production manager, and we have somewhere between 2 and 4 painters doing it. We want all those people to reference that. If all this communication was handed down verbally over phone calls and we didn't take notes on it, we're not going to be able to follow through with don't let my dog out. Here's the garage code. Turn the water off when you're done with the house. Park on the street, not in front of the mailbox. Use the service door instead of the front. I mean, all these things. And when somebody refuses to do that, we just say, listen, we're only doing this because we're trying to help you. Somebody who constantly changes scope. Up or down, this and that. Again, this isn't necessarily a disqualifier, but when you start adding some of these things up, it gets a little bit crazy. Like, oh, we're going to do the island a different color. Now we're not. Now we are. Now we're not. Now we're painting their house already, and they're already changing colors, and we think, you know what? Maybe we should have given you a little more time before we came here. This is a big one. This is sort of this is one that is a truism. Client wants to supply the paint. We don't allow that, because the client will not get us enough paint or get us the wrong paint. And sometimes the colors will be wrong. And if they don't trust our processes, we're not going to do that for them because they may have a gallon of paint left over they want us to use. And they may think that's being efficient. But in the end, labor is what costs. And we won't allow them to do that. Generally, people who ask for discounts, it's not wrong. But again, it's one of those things where we just give consistent pricing, consistent enough where we can pay our people above average wages. We can do health insurance, retirement, paid time off. We have a full-scale finishing facility. We need a certain amount of revenue to support these things and keep the best people in the best craftspeople in the industry around. Stresses timeline irrationally. So this is something we've run into in 2020, and I think it's because everybody's just hanging around home. But we tell people it's 4 to 5 working days to do your kitchen cabinets. And universally, what everybody hears is, oh yeah, it'll be 3.5 days. We say, no, it's on our info sheet. We told you 4 to 5 working days. It's going to take that. And our company works a 4-day work week. So what's likely going to happen is we're going to work Monday through Thursday. There will be time off where we'll deprep your kitchen, and we will be back Monday. And even though you write it down, even though they read it, even though they sign off that they understand, a lot of people stress that timeline irrationally. They want their house back. They want you out. And if they do that, if they say, listen, if you can't do it in 3 days, we don't want the job. We say, sorry, we can't do that. We're not going to promise you 3 days. We said 4 to 5. Many specific job requests. So when somebody, if we're doing a whole house repaint and they say, well, you can do part of this room today, then this tomorrow, we'll say, listen, we just want to be efficient with you here. If we can't do a certain amount of things in a day, we're going to be here forever. And it's going to put our company through a lot of stress. Then there's a couple other things that we do that are sort of internal, not necessarily specific to everybody else. I don't know that'd be helpful, but yeah, that's generally what we do. All right. Going back through. Isaac, use almost zero oil. Oh, Chad, when it's time to move from sole proprietor, one-man operation to adding crew members, how would you expect profit margins to drop initially? The one big data point I see is that I finally got a good data point from a solopreneur where, again, when you see the bedroom that I did, I was producing revenue at 2.5 times the industry average. Apprentices will come in and do half of the industry average. And when you have a single person painter and you add sometimes 2 or 3 other painters in there, your profit may actually be good. The problem is if you're not job costing, Chad, you won't know that you are basically pulling up all the other painters' numbers. You may be producing at 3 times the industry average. They're underproducing. And then this gets known when you exit the field and you lose your tail. The whole business lights on fire because these people are all producing half of what the industry average is. So initially, there is a training period that you're going to have to put somebody through. But I would say for somebody, the answer to this question is answered in how long does it take somebody to at least cover their own wage? I would say if it's a one-person company and you're training one person where you go shoulder to shoulder every day, I would say in 1 to 3 months, that person should at least be covering their own wage, if not producing profitable revenue for your business. That's a whole other master's class, by the way, another 5-hour master's class. Kelly, might sound stupid, but I have a couple of these, but how do you justify your pricing to a client when you have others that will be way cheaper? Kelly, the answer is you don't. I get this all the time. We get this all the time. Hey, we found somebody a third of the price, or we're just going to do it ourselves. All I do is I ask then, what could we have done different to gain your business? And number 2, thank you for the opportunity. You justifying your price to them doesn't mean anything, honestly. Now, if they have questions about it, if they specifically say, why are you 3 times more? Then you can lay out your standard operating procedure. The good thing about job costing is you can even do what we did before and say, listen, I'm going to have 86 hours into your kitchen. What did the other person say they were going to have? That's the equivalent of 2 weeks for one person. Do they even know how long it's going to take them? And here's my standard operating procedure. Here's why I do this. I know the molecular science of oil. I choose oil primer because it does these things. I SVT, I sand back tack, because it does these things so that the oil primer can do this, so I can guarantee you that you won't have a kitchen failure. If they ask, you can go through that. But most painters aren't good at that. They just want to say, most painters don't know why they charge what they do, so justifying your price to a client may not be the best route to take. Most of the time, I just thank people for the opportunity to estimate and try to glean some data point, which is, how could I have got your business? Dave Pine, PBC, definitely borrowing that one. Heading for an estimate now. Good luck, man. Make a happy client. Appreciate you watching. Juan. When painting a staircase railing, what's your perspective between gloss and semi-gloss white? I mainly use semi-gloss, but wondering whether railing is done in gloss. That's not your choice. Really, honestly, that's what the client wants. If they want 2 colors, that's not your choice either. That's determined by them. We use satin enamel in my company. Again, that's my preference. That's what we offer to the clients. If they ask us to do gloss, we can certainly think about it, but we will tell them our standard operating procedure is this, and this is what we offer. If you need something that's too far out of that, then we're just not a good fit for you. But that is usually determined not by you, Juan, and by the actual client. Do you have problems with emerald staying soft long? Yes, absolutely. You're on fire. Thanks a lot, man. I love this a lot. Now, I'm getting self-conscious that I haven't showed you guys how to paint anything, or I haven't had interviews in a while. My shop is coming together. I'm working through the city to make sure that we are a 100% compliant, code applicable shop. And before I can get in there and start doing a whole bunch of stuff and showing you guys cool things, I want to make sure that we're on the up and up before I blast it all over the internet. So I will show you painting stuff, and I will show you interviews sooner or later. But I've been having a blast Saturday morning, having my coffee, doing thought experiments with you guys here. But I will be back in the field sooner than later here. Mark, do you like oil-based primer and a urethane top coat on your cabinets? We have switched from hybrid top coats in 2019, mid-2020, we switched from using Advance and Emerald Trim Urethane to Benjamin Moore Scuff X. We use oil primer, and then we use Scuff X satin. And that is this entire, all the trim and stuff you see here in this house. The walls are actually matte Scuff X in this house too. Marco, good morning, Nick. What do you think about subs versus employees? Again, I think about every question in our industry, not as which is better, but in which is better for you. Our good friend, Jason Paris, who's watching the show, throwing up into a trash can because we're talking about oil primer, runs basically 100% sub model, and that fits his thing perfectly. He's masterful at it. I would argue he might be one of the best in the country at it. I run a W2 model because our processes and systems and the way our goals, our business, our people fit that better. It's the same reason why we don't solely focus on new construction. We're probably not as good as new construction, at least fitting in with the general contracting world, as we are with private client work where there's kids learning from home, there's pets, and there's parents working from home. That's where we specialize, and we know that. We perform very well. We make insanely happy clients, and we actually do a really good profit doing that sort of thing. So employees versus subs, pros and cons to each. I would say, depending on what you do, depending on what you like, it's all basically a game of accountability. Getting people to do certain things, holding them accountable to it. And it's not easier. One is not easier than the other one. There's risks, there's rewards different with each one, but we do some subcontracting as well. I wouldn't lie to you and say that we're 100% employee. We do some of that too. It's just another thing. And it's just another set of things you have to hold people accountable to. So I don't really have a deep thought about it. Oh, James. Oh, man, using Scuff X on the built-in now. Oh, man, I love that stuff too. How does your rep bringing you fresh eggs every Monday feel about your Benjamin Moore allegiance? So again, I see a common thread through this stuff today. This versus this, this versus this, this versus this. Graco versus Titan, Benjamin Moore versus Sherwin-Williams, sub versus employee. We need to be open-minded, people. I love everybody, by the way. Everybody makes good stuff. One of the most interesting threads and telling threads on the internet is when somebody posts something, what's your favorite wall paint on one of the just sort of unvarnished painters groups on Facebook. And somebody will no doubt say Sherwin-Williams sucks. Everything they have sucks. That's a pretty ignorant stance to take. Sherwin-Williams is a global conglomerate. They sell paint for everything on earth. If you can't tell me that they don't make one single product that is good, you're stupid. That is a very regressive stance to take. Likewise with Benjamin Moore, with Hirschfield's, my local thing here. One of the best oil varnishes I've ever used comes from a 4th generation family coatings creator and retailer here. Everybody makes good stuff. It's not saying everything else is bad. It's saying I found one that's really good. I'm going to go where the best is ever. Likewise, I just tested out how do I say this? I tested out another enamel. My Sherwin-Williams rep wants me to stop using Scuff-X and stop using something equivalent. I tried something out in my shop this week. It's promising. I'm just going to go with who has the best stuff. And I want to provide a failure-proof, simple coating that my clients get a lot of value of. And we will constantly be on the look for that. I am not a company man. I don't simply subscribe to one thing versus another. I go where the good stuff is. Absolutely, man. All right, let's see. Let's go through. We've been neglecting Instagram here. Oh. Do you like bin shellac? David King. We use that over cover stain. Yes, I'm not saying bin is bad. All right. So over the last 10 years, I have a cabinet finishing and trim finishing master's class that I travel the country with, where I get down to the coating science. I've talked to 3 or 4 of the smartest people, a chemist with a PhD level education who work for coating companies who formulate these things, that have actually shown me stick and ball models of primers, of top coats, and how they work. You guys have all done it. You bin shellac guys. I'm not opposed to this stuff, but there is something better out there, oil primer, because I can still get it. Every bin shellac person has sooner or later experienced some type of bleed through or chipping with that. It might only be 1 out of 50. It might only be 1 out of 100, but it does happen. I've had 0 of those with oil primer. Shellac. All right. So again, when you think about this, don't think problem solution. It works for me. This is what I use. Good. Don't stop using it. I would urge you to add, to give your client something very valuable. Now, there are some self-evident things about coatings. There is no prescribed exterior use for lacquer. There is no exterior prescribed use for shellac, except for sealing up knots. Why isn't there an exterior lacquer? Now, there's some weird, water-based kind of stuff for front doors and wood, but there is not widespread lacquer use, the physical lacquer, the chemical lacquer use outside. Why is that? The molecules are like spaghetti. When you take a bowl of spaghetti, you dump it on a countertop. However it lays, it lays. Sometimes they're intertwined. Sometimes there's gaps. Sometimes they're thin. It just lays and it doesn't change. They're long chains. The molecules of lacquer are long chains. When you've seen lacquer fail on a wood window, how does it fail? Long strips, thin strips, and you can shave it off with your finger. By its nature, by that spaghetti chain sort of thing, water gets into it and sometimes cannot evaporate. The problem is it lets water in. If you've ever been to a hotel or a commercial venue where there's white rings on nightstands and things like that, that is a lacquer finish. Water has gone through the lacquer finish and it's clouding underneath because it can't get back out. Oil varnish does not do that. Oil varnish has super tiny molecules, sometimes 20 times smaller than water-based paint, and they actually coalesce and chemically bond together to make sure there's no gaps in there. Lacquer, by its nature, is not good or bad. It just doesn't do some things that oil-based things do. That's why I do not use lacquer on cabinets. It does not stand up to water. All new construction is lacquer. I know that. I just get it. It's fine. This isn't a judgment call, but it's not as good as other products. That's just the way it is. Same thing with shellac. That's a long way around of going. I've tested everything. I have 30 or 40 cabinet doors in my shop where I test primers all the time. I do scratch tests. I do adhesion tests. We do crosshatch adhesion testings, things like that. And honestly, 1 out of 10, 1 out of 15 bin applications fails for me. It just doesn't do as good. It might do really good. It might do 99% good. The problem is there is an option for me that's 100% every time. And for me, it's just not worth using bin. You have to ask yourself, why do people use bin and why do people use lacquer? When they search their heart, it's because it dries quicker, not because it provides a better finish. In my opinion, again, I'm always open to be proven wrong, but that's generally when I talk to people, that's what they do. You don't pick lacquer because you think you're providing a superior quality. You're providing superior dry time. Bruce. Do you visit each home estimate or do you have a system to check Google Maps, Zillow, and ask the owner questions? It depends. I used to do for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been doing tons of virtual estimates. Turns out in a world of a global pandemic, people love face-to-face stuff and they're not interested in virtual estimates, which is the craziest thing on the face of the planet to me. But that's what we do. So first of all, we try to make sure that a client is a good fit. Right away, if somebody says, I need my house done the last week of April, the outside will say, you know what? We already have a bunch of stuff on the books. And also the weather's probably not going to cooperate. We can't guarantee that to you. And if they say, well, fine, then we need it done then, we say, good, I've saved the time of giving you an estimate. You will find somebody else to do that. Or if they say, well, you know what? That's fine. I guess we're open to it this summer too. Then we'll go do an estimate. But I don't take a punitive stance for potential clients. I know this is something interesting. A lot of painters take a punitive stance to people who contact them to paint. They immediately try to weed them out. What's your budget? What's your timeline? And they try to almost disqualify clients. I don't disqualify anybody. I want this person as a client. So I go as far as I can, as long as they follow our processes and meet our criteria, to get them to be a client. I don't think it's a great stance to try to weed out or pre-qualify clients. I mean, there are some clients that pre-qualify themselves. Like I got a lead the other day through the website saying, hey, I'm an old Vietnam vet. I saw that you're a veteran too. I have a brand new electronic wheelchair. Would you come up here and assemble it for me? And it's like, not for the business, I won't. It's just not a good fit. Like I'll connect you with some veterans resources. We'll see if we can make a connection and get a caregiver over there. But there's some people that are like, no, it's just not going to be a fit. And you can pre-qualify them. But I would not whole scale go out there and try to take a punitive stance with people and try to get them not to get your stuff. Isaac, I used ChemAqua on my last cabinet repaint. Have you had good or bad experience with ChemAqua? Yeah, sorry, we may have breezed right past this, but not a fan of any lacquers, just because that's my business, you know. Favorite varnish? Yes, Hirschfield's 1 hour finish dull read. I love that stuff for what we do. Masterful. Also from Hirschfield's, which one of my good friends, Jason Miller, Jason the painter from Minneapolis, one of the most beautiful varnishes. It's actually this desk here. It's this conference table, Old Masters Super Varnish Satin. That is one of the hardest, most beautiful shines I've ever used. And it's nearly failure proof. Like all this stuff I brushed on, and it keeps an open time just long enough to settle out, but it doesn't stay open so long like traditional linseed oil varnishes read, which you know, that you get a whole bunch of dust and crap in there too. So it's just masterful. Those two clear finishes from Hirschfield's, I just love. Chad, by allowing different brands the chance to give you a high quality will force competition. Yes. Always be open-minded. Be open-minded to subcontracting, to employees, to pricing, to different SOPs, to different painting companies. Nobody does everything perfectly. All right, last couple on Instagram, then we're out of here. This has been a long one today. So I would say a key factor is over communicating with a client. Executive painting. Yep. From Instagram. Do we have the time to talk about, oh yeah, there's the oil primer. Can we talk about top coats for trim? Yes. I think we just did that there. Hello, everybody. How's it going? Oh yes. Here we go. The painter guy. Okay. So I know they say hire fast, fire fast. But how long do you give someone with zero experience to learn? Oh, they never say hire fast, fire fast. Hire slow, fire fast. Absolutely. No, do not hire fast. Do not hire fast. Disregard. Do not take that advice. That might just been worded differently, but do not hire fast. We've just completed the first week of Apprenticeship 2.0. It takes 2 months generally from the time I put an ad out to the time somebody starts in my business, because we put a whole bunch of hurdles in front of them to see if they're a core value match. We also look for something. You know, we talked about PBC, people be crazy. We look for something that we love to call MPC, mass personal chaos. We do not let people into this company with mass personal chaos, because they will bring that mass personal chaos with them and create chaos for my other beautiful, awesome, decent human beings in the company. And I do not want that. So hire slow, fire fast. And that is the key. Jesus. This guy provides retirement. Yes, health insurance and paid time off as well. I also pay for, here's an interesting benefit. I pay for everybody's lunches. That equates to about 100 to 110 hours of paid time a year. That's the equivalent to about 2.5 week vacation every year that we pay for our painters. It eases up bookkeeping. It's a nice benefit for them. And I think it's a good thing. Norton, Scuffex semi-gloss, PPG breakthrough, anything satin. Absolutely. Can you please post a guideline for spray tips? Absolutely. Jesus. So I have a cheat sheet. It's not perfect. It's for my company. It's for my people, but it quickly runs down what coating, what tip, and what we use on stuff like that. So any of those things, you must ask for them specifically. Don't say, give me the spreadsheet from the show. You must say, I'm looking for the sprayer tip cheat sheet from show number, what is this, 245, give or take. Email me, nick@nickslavic.com, and I will gladly oblige. But I will ask for a review. What did your rep recommend to you over ScuffX? Norton, it's a soon-to-be-released Sherwin-Williams coating that will probably be out in March or April for wide consumption. Have you tried, oh, yeah, here we go. Have you tried any of the 2K water-based finishes from Malaysia, and what are your thoughts? Yeah, they're great products. Fine. There's lots of variables with them. There's hardeners, there's crosslinkers, there's reducers, there's extenders, there's stuff you have to mix. I'm not saying they're good or bad. I'm saying for my business, for my apprenticeship program, for my clients, we have a foolproof, failure-proof system right now with oil primer and ScuffX on the trim. We have experimented with these things and they're fine, but there's enough variables where if you, right now, maybe this data point will help you guys clarify. We have somebody who on their second day of being in the company sprayed a set of kitchen cabinet doors, and they did it perfectly. Under the guidance of one of my craftspeople, using them. If they use something where you introduce variables of cross-linkers, of mixing, of reducing, of this and that, there's always a chance that that would have failed. Our systems and processes are maximized to give the client the most value, the most beautiful fine finishes with zero failures by people who have not been in the trade their entire life. Dudes like Eric Reason, who is a master at this stuff, test, don't guess. One of the people I look up to most in this industry as far as like nerd knowledge on coatings, he can use the most complex coatings that this world can devise, and he will do a great job because he has a brain for it. He has the experience for it. Some of my apprentices who did not know they were going to be a painter a year ago, who are now a painter, you have to make it easy for them so they can focus on taking care of the client and not necessarily cross-linkers adding to 1Ks and 2K poly. Great products. Right now, not a fit for my company. All right, in California, oil-based isn't allowed, so if you had to choose, what would you choose? I would choose hybrid primers. Sherwin-Williams makes a great hybrid primer. Benjamin Moore makes an awesome hybrid primer, the advanced primer. And Zinsser Smart Prime, fine, but you're still going to get that failure 1 out of every 20 times it's a water-based primer. It's just like water-based primers have not got there yet. Water-based primers can do one of 3 things good, but not all 3. They can stick, or they can stop bleeding, or they can sand. But I've never found one to do all 3 all the time. So let's see, what do you use versus bin? I use bin for knots, 2 coats, Zinsser Cover Stain or Extreme Block. Oh, Dominic from Ireland. We moved to Cover Stain over bin years ago, except on knots. Absolutely. Moisture movement, just don't mix. Cover Stain is bulletproof. Dude, you got it, man. That's the way it goes. Speaking of food, what are your thoughts on food, nutrition, and exercise? Yes, this is great. This is, eventually I should get back to my family here. This is a long one today. So just like everything else, I focus on some things first, because if people try to like create SOPs, create an apprenticeship program, reform the business, job cost, health, nutrition, everything, you're going to get overwhelmed. And even though I have an insanely fast revving engine, I have a high capacity for taking a lot of things on, I get overwhelmed by stuff like that. So over the last bunch of years, I focused on the decent human being thing, getting people in the business. Now that we have a proven system for that, we have proven SOPs, we have production managers, we have estimators, proven systems for doing that, I can circle back and focus on some of those things which are staying healthier. And over the last 3 years, I've collected data, I've done experiments, and I've done a lot of things that I don't enjoy very much. Every winter, I pick something else to do. There was outdoor walking 3 years ago where I trudged through snow to get exercise. The next year was yoga. I did yoga every morning. The next year I did swimming at our local Olympic swimming pool. This year I'm doing traditional strength training and then outdoor walking. So every morning, typically when I'm not sick, when I don't have overwhelm with work, what I'll do is a half an hour of just simple basic exercises. Again, simplicity. And then I'll walk between 4 and 5 miles out on these country roads out here. And I coupled that also with watching what I eat. I try to eat between 1,800 to 2,000 calories a day, generally healthy food. Again, I've gone down the rabbit hole of like how many grams of protein and all this and that, and it's not something I can keep up with. So now I just do simple stuff, try to be reasonable. And I know that this is the long play, but it's going to make me healthy and make sure that I can do this for a long time. So yeah, when other things are solved, that's what I focus on. But there's been a lot of years in this business where I needed between 4 in the morning and 8 at night to work on my business. If I put in an hour and a half of exercise or 2 hours of exercise a day, I wouldn't have got done the things I've got done. So, if you had to brush and roll a cabinet in the client's kitchen, would you prefer to use premium latex blocking primer than a hybrid finish versus the full oil prime? If so, no. The reason I use oil primer is because it sticks, it stops bleeding, and it sands really well. I am not interested in using any other primers because there will be failures going to that. So I would do the same thing. If I had to brush and roll cover stain, I would reduce it 10%. I would use a Nylox brush, and I do not use mini rollers. It's actually a joke in my company. I abhor mini rollers. I use them only for a couple exterior projects. I don't find any benefit to them for fine finishing at all. Doors, anything like that. I can get a finer finish with a 2.5-inch straight cut Nylox than I can with any single mini roller I've ever tried. Open to have my mind changed. All right. Fresh Coat, have a good weekend. I'm working on a workout and diet program for people in the trades. Also, it's going to involve, dude, that'd be great, man. I would love to see that whenever you have that. So, okay, people, last couple. Let's go through here. I see people. Okay, here we go. Last couple questions and I will be done. I see people singing praises of poly paints for cabinets. What are the disadvantages you found on those? It's the variables I talked about. And people run into witchcraft every once in a while. They're newer products. They're I think if you, now listen, I'm not opposed to these. I think they are great products if we use them in the right way for the right reasons. I believe that they are probably product finishing products. Like I think these Malaysies and all this stuff, 2K, 1K polys, all these modifiers, crosslinkers, reducers, thinners, whatever. I think they're actually came from or suited for product finishing on an assembly line. I could be wrong, but that's my impression when I look into them, what they came from and what they're used for. So adapting them to oak in a house that's lived in can be a little difficult sometimes. They're great products. Some of the people that I look up to in this industry use them with great success. The problem is what I am not interested in is things you can't control and witchcraft. So just like with bin, you may do 30 jobs with bin and 29 of them will be perfect, exceptional, the highest quality finish. 1 out of 30 may be witchcraft. Something happens. It cracks, it bleeds, it chips, it does something. I'm not interested in that. I don't want any witchcraft. I don't want any weirdness happening in my business at all. Cindy, how can you hire an estimator? First of all, you got to have a need for one. Second of all, you put a job ad out. But again, if you guys watched last week's episode, people immediately think, I want an estimator, I want a painter, so I'm just going to hire a painter. But there's probably 8 or 9 things you need to do before you hire somebody like that. I would say go back to the last show. Before you even think about bringing on an estimator, look at that thing that sheet that lists a bunch of things that has to happen before that. And I would say do some of those first before. But that's pretty simple. It's nothing more than a clinical job ad and finding somebody that's a core value match for your company. So I'm new to the trade. Do you have a rule of thumb for estimating exterior paint? And how do you think a company can make it doing exterior only in Orange County? Yeah, absolutely. So here's the problem, Bruce. You missed about an hour and a half of why I can't just give you a price for that. You got to do some, you got to job cost them and then adjust your prices after. You can absolutely do only exteriors in Orange County. I assume the weather is above freezing all the time there, maybe less 1 or 2 days a year. So yeah, you can absolutely do that. I know people down there. And if you contact me, I can always put you in contact with them down there as well. Oh yeah, no problem, man. Just started using Malaysia for cabinets. We really love it. Bit of a learning curve. Yeah. And that's just it. It's not good. It's not bad by itself. I'm not opposed to any of that stuff. It just is what it is. So, okay, people, I'm out of here. I'm going to sign off for the day. Thank you guys so much for doing this. I'm enjoying these Saturday mornings a lot. I promise you, we'll go back and mix in some interviews and some actual painting one of these days. But for now, I'm being inundated with how to hire, how to estimate. So I thought I'd get this information out there so you guys can reference it. And everybody, if these conversations interest you, just look up the PCA. Jason Paris, who we know and love from the show here, is actually taking the helm of the board of directors this next year and for the next couple of years. And we'll be ushering in a brand new sort of age of the PCA. And I would urge you, remember how exciting that we've been in this industry over the last couple of years with all the new faces, new voices, new ideas. Now he's bringing that to a national nonprofit for our industry. So I would urge you guys, if nothing else, they got free resources. Look into it. You don't necessarily have to be a member, but all the people who think like me are there. And I would urge you to seek them out. So, all right, folks, you have a good weekend. We will see you.